Hello, friends. Hello, friends.
A tradition unlike any other.
Oh my goodness. In your life have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
Our friends at Cobra Puma Golf have done it again with the new Aerojet family of drivers built to be the most aerodynamic they've ever made. Building on the impressive design and performance of the previous LTDX lineup, the advanced aerodynamic shaping of the Aerojet family is the product of years of research and testing with some of the fastest swings on the planet. The Aerojet drivers are available in 3 models aimed at catering to every player in the market. The Aerojet LS, or low spin, rated the longest driver for 2023 by MyGolfSpy, is designed for skilled players that demand low launch and low spin for maximum workability and control. The standard Aerojet appeals to the wider spectrum of players and features aerodynamic shaping for faster club speed and an impressive combination of forgiveness and speed for maximum distance. And of course, the Aerojet Max, probably more along the lines of yourself and myself, Drewster, blends aero shaping with maximum stability and optional draw bias, with a variety of adjustable weight ports offering an absurd amount of stability, control, and forgiveness for those of you who, just like us, struggle a little bit to get it off the tee box. All 3 models also feature the PowerShell face insert, which debuts for the first time on a Cobra driver, delivering a larger sweep zone for faster ball speed right across the face. So for more information on all 3 models of the Aerojet driver and to view the full family of fairway woods, visit www.cobragolf.com. This is the 19th Tee podcast presented by Cobra Puma Golf. Kieran Marsh and Nathan Drudy back with you for another week. Drew, it's a pleasure as always to have your company. And the run of success for Australian amateurs that we touched on in last week's program continued with an historic victory for Yarra amateur Phoenix Campbell, who becomes the first amateur in the 97-year history of the Queensland PGA Championship to be crowned its winner at the Nudgee Golf Club.
Yes, pleasure to be back, Cam, and well done for getting the presenting partner in Cobra Puma in the intro there for the first time as well. I had complete and utter faith in you, but a very, very small part of me thought that we would have to re-record the intro at some point. But pleasure to be back. What a tournament Queensland PGA was. I mean, that's the second year in a row that it's really delivered above and beyond. I mean, it kind of can get a little bit lost in the schedule. It's just preceding, some fantastic events. Obviously I'm not talking about the Gippsland Super 6, but, I'm talking about the Vic Open and of course the Australian Summer and 2 years in a row it's really delivered. And as you said, what a finish. And young Phoenix Campbell, just stuffing it on the 72nd hole and getting the win. So looking forward to unpacking that, KM.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you make, Drudes, in terms of the Kurai course there at Nudgee Golf Club. Obviously underwent some significant work a few years back now. I think that's the 3rd version of this tournament we've played on the redeveloped course, but does lend itself to a bit of a dramatic finish. I think there's a variety of factors that contribute to that. Finishing on a par 3 is unusual as it relates to championship golf here in Australia, particularly when that par 3 is quite a daunting forced carry, a good 140, 150 metres. And more often than not, they'll stick the Sunday pin at the very front of what is essentially a 3-tiered green as well. So there's a lot of, I think, factors and weather again played its part. Last year it was quite windy out at Nudgee. This year it was rain that played a factor. So I think there are a lot of variables, to your point, that really do contribute to a dramatic finish. And I think it got that again. I mean, to say that young Phoenix Campbell was 8 strokes back, that's where he started the day, 8 strokes back of the lead to hole a birdie putt to put himself in the clubhouse lead at 9 under, and then to finish ahead of a 7-way tie, 1 shot back at 8 under. I think all of those things point to what was an incredibly exciting finish, but credit to the tournament, 4 days that really culminated in an awesome afternoon there on Sunday.
Well, I just wanted to pick up on your point on the pin position because I've got it in my notes here to mention the pin position. It was obviously on the right hand side on the water side, but I was a little disappointed that it was on the back shelf because there was a lot of people a lot of players were just able to kind of use the slope and get it real close. I mean, most players were just kind of drawing it in there and holding it up against the breeze, using the slope and getting it close on Sunday, but last year, I remember if you cast your mind back, that was on the front shelf, and it caused a lot of havoc for a lot of different people. And so I would have loved to have seen it there this year, but I reckon there might have been a few player complaints that came through last year, and that's why the pin ended up where it did on the back shelf. But you still had to be good enough to hit the slope, and a lot of players did. And Phoenix Campbell obviously got his very close and just tapped it in, and all of a sudden he was in the lead. As you said, Marshy, just a crazy finish, and so many. There was so much happening. There were so many different little storylines. Of course, we ended up with 7 players finished in a tie for second. Each of them had their own opportunities to get into a playoff, I guess, in the end. Of course, our 54-hole leader, Andrew Kelly, had one of the great implosions with a 78 on Sunday. As we say, just vomited all over himself and ruined his chances. But I think the true storyline and the biggest one of and rightly so is the win of Phoenix Campbell, as you said, the amateur, who started the tournament with a 3 over 75, if you don't mind, and went 68, 69, 67 in what as you rightly pointed out, was trying conditions. So, I mean, he deserves all the prizes and everything that comes his way, but doesn't come his way because he's an amateur. Unfortunately, he gets none of the winnings, and that all just splits down over the 7 players who finished in T2, which I'm sure we'll run through them shortly. But plenty of players had their opportunities, and I think if Phoenix Campbell winning was the main headline, then I think you and I were headline number 2 because our 2 players finished in a tie for second, and I think that was a true turn up for the cards because we truly have been awful with our tips this year, and it was nice to be back up the top of the leaderboard. Well, no, I don't say back up the top of the leaderboard because we haven't fucking been there. It's nice to be at the top of the leaderboard for a change.
Yeah, and I think, we touched on this on last Tuesday evening, I think it was, that we ended up recording, saying that, poor old Laurie Flynn and David Micheluzzi would have been trembling at the thought that they'd been nominated by both of us. Based on form, they would have been packing their bags at Friday afternoon and probably not playing weekend golf. But pleased to say that we got as close as you humanly can be without either of our tips lifting the trophy. They both had their chance. Loza, Laurie Flynn, who, might I add, you tipped him. We spoke to our good mate Brenton Ford from Cobra Puma Golf, who played around with him at Spring Valley down in Melbourne last week. Laurie was in town supporting the contingent in the Asia Pacific Amateur, and Fordy had him out at his home course at Spring Valley and said he was flushing the ball. And, kind of fortuitous timing, serendipitous even, that he kind of goes out and plays in the manner in which he did. He went out in 31 to start his round. As well in that final round on Sunday to really enter the frame, and got a little leaky on the back 9, but finishes in a tie for second, which is one of, if not his best results playing on the PGA Tour of Australasia. But so many different potential outcomes there. I'm just kind of reading through here. You've got Jack Pountney from Coffs Harbour. He led by a stroke with 4 holes to play. He hadn't even passed 72. And I want to round back to Jack Pountney because I'm maybe one of the most unique techniques, which we'll touch on in a moment.
I believe he Monday qualified as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, let's not round back to it. We'll just point out now. I think putts right-handed, plays left-handed.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I've ever seen that, not even at the professional level. Like, I'm just playing with people at the local club. I'm not sure I've ever seen an ambidextrous player who putts differently to how they swing the club in other parts of the course. So Jack Pountney is a story in and of himself. So he leads by 1 with 4 to play. Harrison Crowe, he matches the day's best score at 66 to sit at 800 in the clubhouse. And then Mika, to your point, I think, respectfully, Mika's probably got the most right to be disappointed in retrospect, because he's had a one over for the day. He rocketed into contention, courtesy of an incredibly low round on Saturday, and he's gone 73 on Sunday, missing that birdie putt that lipped on the 72nd hole, and ultimately falling one short. And greatest respect to Phoenix Campbell, I think pushed to a playoff, you'd probably back Mika one-on-one going back up 18. So it was as exciting a finish as we've seen in some time, and there would have been, we've mentioned 5 names there, 5 incredibly good storylines, irrespective of who's lifted the trophy. For Phoenix Campbell now, and I don't know if this has crossed your mind, Drudes, but it didn't for me until I read earlier in the day. He's got quite a decision on his hands now, because if he turns professional in the next week, that really opens up, not least of which, the Gippsland Super 6 and Warragul on a winner's exemption in the winners category, but it guarantees him a number of starts across the remainder of the summer. Or he maintains his amateur status, and he's going to have to end up in a whole heap of Monday qualifying events to shore up the rest of his summer. So he was asked about that. He said, his intention was certainly to turn professional at some stage in the near future, if not potentially over this summer. I wonder if this accelerates the decision based purely on giving him some certainty across, the next 3-4 months.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think, we've seen it. There were a couple of other, there were some announcements sort of midweek last week as well, literally after we finished recording, that a number of players had turned professional as well. So as they say, 'tis the season. So it'll be interesting to see what Phoenix Campbell does want to do. I just wanted to touch on Mika there for a minute. I watched a lot of the final round, and fortunate that I've seen him play a lot. It didn't seem like he was as comfortable as what he looks normally. He made just looking at his scorecard here, the double on 3 was never a good start, and then I think it was hole 15 that he drove it. I think it went OB. I was in and out of the broadcast at that point. He drove it right and ended up making par, but that par 5 would be a hole that you'd almost back Mika to make birdie on. And then the 10th hole as well, he birdied the first 3 days and then goes out and bogeys it. So I'm sure that Mika, to your point, would be incredibly disappointed with the way that he maybe played in those final 18 holes. He scrambled pretty well. He did have a putt to get into a playoff, and it wasn't a ridiculously hard putt. It just kind of broke right on him a little towards the end, and he did get lucky on the 72nd hole. I don't know if you saw his shot in. It was a 6-iron that basically, nearly got caught up in the fescue rough on the right hand side, and I nearly missed it into the water, and it just managed to pop out and roll down, and he had a putt for birdie, but to get into a playoff wasn't to be. But the greens are just deviating a slight amount. I'd be really interested to get some anonymous feedback from on the floor, but the greens looked very bumpy and bobbly. There were a lot of putts that they kind of lined up behind sort of that reverse angle, and a lot of putts seem to be bumping and jumping around. So I'd be really interested to see. I know, if any of the players are listening to this, they can get in touch anonymously and let us know. But I know we've kind of glossed over a lot of different players here. The only one I just wanted to mention was Dean Lawson. Just kind of snuck into contention at the end there, but had a putt to also get to 9 under par and missed, and was very frustrated, but then kind of just like smacked his ball away into the water in frustration. I just didn't love the look. I thought it was a little bit, we talk very highly about our players on our tour, and I just didn't love the way that looked. For Digger Lawson, he would have been very frustrated, no doubt. But one of 7 players finishing in second place, that no one could find one more birdie on the card.
Yeah, quite amazing, really, when you consider it. Nick Folk was the other one there who ends up one over par for the day, and himself or Mika finish even, and they're in a 3-way playoff for the championship. Look, not to gloss over it, I think it's a good point you make about Dane Lawson. he's a player that we've been certainly full of praise for in the past, but you need to be caught on your actions. I don't know if you saw the video, and many people would have dreads of the amount of kids that were around the 18th
Yes.
green across the entire weekend. You know, it kind of got a bit of coverage on Saturday, I think it was, and it might have been Ben Ferguson finishing his round, and he kind of got ambushed, and you know, to his credit, was emptying his bag of the Pro V1s and his gloves, and it was excellent. Like, that's exactly what you want to see. Saturday was a relatively good day weather-wise to get out there, and clearly there's plenty who did, and the converse of that is that's not the behaviour that you want to exhibit when you've got so many impressionable young fans of the game around that final hole. So look, a moment, I'm sure that's not him, you know, he's not that type of player or person. One, in retrospect, I'm sure that he'll be regretting and based purely out of frustration, but it was worth calling out. The player I wanted to call out in the top 10 as well was Kazuma Kabori. Drews. He didn't end up finishing amongst that pack of 7 who were in a tie for second. He was a further stroke back at 7 under in a tie for 9th. The reason I call him out is he was one of a group that also included Jeffrey Guan. You mentioned there was a few of them. So Kazuma Kabori, Jeffrey Guan, who we've spoken a lot about, you know, his pending decision to turn pro. Well, that happened the week prior, and that was off the back of those players playing in the Asia Pacific Amateur down at Royal Melbourne last week. So Kazuma Kabori, a perennially talented Kiwi, and he ends up in his first tournament as a professional, finishing in a tie for 9th and taking home a tick over $6,000 Australian, if you don't mind. So I just thought that was worth calling out. The others weren't as impressive in their pro debut, but certainly for Kazuma Kabori, it was a weekend well spent at the Nudgee Golf Club.
Agree. I had Jake McLeod was one I just wanted to mention as well. He finished in a tie for 12th at 6 under par. I thought there were some good signs from Jake. Obviously, sort of had a really good season a couple of years ago, and I think probably by his own admission has maybe struggled to put it together in the last 12 to 18 months, and just some really good signs. I know he had a very poor back 9 on the second round, but managed to work his way back and finish with a 68 as well on Sunday in windy conditions. I thought was good. Cameron John keeps playing good golf, as does Braden Becker. I did a bit of stat hunting before as well, Marshy, on this, because please. I mean, there's one thing that the tour maybe doesn't do as well. It's stats. So I went through. There were only 5 players in the field who made the cut and who didn't have a round over par. So there were only 5 players who made the cut who didn't have a round over par. They were Dane Lawson, Laurie Flynn, Jack Pountney, who all finished at 8 under par T2, Jordan Zunic at T15 at 5 under par, and Chris Fan at T20 at 4 under par. So I just thought that was interesting that we don't often see that low of a number of players getting around and not shooting at least 1 round over par anyway. So thought that was an interesting stat.
Fascinating, really. It's an interesting course in the sense that I think it offers you plenty of opportunities. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's it skews overly risk reward, but there's certainly a particular number of approach shots in the second 9 that ask questions. So look, I think we saw it, and players managed the weather conditions quite well. I mean, it wasn't like torrential, but Sunday in particular was a difficult start to the day, and I think that just it asks you another question. Like, you've already got some challenging holes coming home, not least of which kind of the 17-18 is a big finish there. The 18th we've touched on. The 17th asks, a decent number of questions as well. So when you've got the extra factor of weather to consider, I thought that obviously Phoenix Campbell's the one that's lifting the drive, and he weathered it as well as anyone. But again, I'm really impressed with a group of players coming home, and there are some statistical anomalies like the ones you've pointed out, but a quality tournament. And that course, without wanting to ramble too much on it, there were players quite critical of it. You'll recall, Druids. when it was first redeveloped.
Yep.
Some going as far to say that it was probably a year too early. So we're in the third iteration of this. So the 2021 tournament was the first tournament held on the redeveloped Nudgee Golf Club, and there was probably a line of thinking out of not an insignificant portion of the playing cohort that it was a year too early.
Mm-hmm.
We come back a year. So that was Anthony Quayle the first year. We come back a year later, and you've got our man, your new favourite Instagram handle, Silky Aaron Wilkin. He gets it done when the course has had another year to mature and grow itself. I was super impressed with it this year, and I think that's a course that, to your point, it may be a victim of scheduling in terms of where it falls. There's a lot of guys trending towards that. The Vic Open now, and then of course the PGA in the last week of November. But it is becoming a serious tournament, I think. Outside of the two blue ribbon ones, there's probably a nominal second tier, and it's, I'd say, starting to edge its way into that second tier of tournament for the summer here in Australia.
Agreed. Yep. No, I think that's a very good call out. For as much praise as we'd like to give out, I think we've probably also got to talk about a couple of poor stories. And I hate to pile shit onto Andrew Kelly, but my God, that was a really tough final round. He was the 54-hole leader, playing in the final group with Mika. And I can't recall who the other player was in the final group. My apologies. But he started the day with a bogey, then had 9 pars in a row, then went bogey, par, bogey, double, bogey on the par 5, par, birdie on the par 5, finished with a bogey with a 41 on the back 9 and a 78, all in all for 6 over par. 14 was a real tough watch where things really started to fall off. He hit a shot into the fairway and it flew the green on 14 and just left himself just a nothing shot. Coming back up the hill, didn't get it up the hill, came back to his feet, went high, pushed it long, actually had a longer putt than Mika on that hole, and Mika kind of gestured to him and just said, just take your time, I'll have a go, like I'm ready to play, which I thought was good from Mika. And unfortunately, Andrew Kelly ended up making double bogey there. So I just thought that was, unfortunately, we've got to call those things out where you've got your 54-hole leader who ends up slipping down the list and finishing outside the top 10. He finished in a tie for 12th at 6 under par. So not a great day.
No, especially when you consider, you mentioned he's a 54-hole leader. It wasn't by a small amount either. He's 3 strokes clear after 54 holes.
Correct.
And he finishes 3 strokes behind Phoenix Campbell. So, a 6-shot swing on the final day of the tournament. We are often overly romanced by low round Sundays to go and win the tournaments, and rightfully so. That's what we want to see in our players is, the lights shine brightest when it matters, but that's near as the complete opposite as you'd find. And I feel for him because, for a player like Andrew Kelly, that opportunity is significant. He's had a really good overall start to the season. Through the first handful of tournaments, he's sitting relatively well as it relates to the order of merit list. But we know, and it's no disrespect to Andrew Kelly, but a player of his, I suppose, tier within the broader ecosystem of Australian golf, they need to take full advantage of this first third of the season before you get people flying home, or you get people like Mika who have the luxury of taking the first couple of tournaments off and really strategically picking the tournaments worth more points. They enter the fray. So I've got no doubt he'd be kicking himself because there was a perfect cherry ripe opportunity to kind of really cement his place in the top 10 going into some of the big tournaments of the summer, and he kissed that away on Sunday. So yeah, it doesn't help, two bozos like you and I underlining it, because there's no one more acutely aware of the opportunity cost than Andrew Kelly, I'm sure. But it's it's something that has to be underlined, because you don't often see a 54-hole leader toss it away in such a fashion.
A couple others that I just wanted to call out that didn't make the cut. Aaron Pike at 2 over Jeffrey Guan, as he mentioned in his pro debut, didn't make the cut. Josh Greer, after a really good start to the season, not there. Mav Antcliffe, Brett Rankin, Jared Felton, Justin Warren, James Grierson, Josh Armstrong. I mean, there's some names on this list that didn't make the cut. Scott Strange is one. Shea Wolves Cobb, who I think is a criminally underrated player here in Australia. Austin Batista, Lincoln Tye, Daniel Gale at 9 over par. Blake Collier, Jay McKenzie. So there's some big names that kind of missed that missed the cut there. So all in all, I think to put a bow on the Queensland PGA, unless you've got anything further to add, I thought it was a fascinating tournament. Once again, the 18th hole proved to be really interesting. I can just hope that the Sunday pin ends up down the front again. That's all I'm asking.
Look, I tend to agree, and I think it's just worth kind of underlining Austin Batista, Daniel Gale are 2 winners in this current season. So this is the nature of this summer, right? Like, it's so open, it's so deep, and it really illustrates that you've got 2 guys who've won tournaments in recent months who've missed a cut here in a very competitive field. So we've put together a great schedule. The roster is as full as it's been in years, based on coming out of the back of some pretty challenging seasons by way of the pandemic. And I think it just goes to show that this is competitive on any given week, and if you're off your game by 2-3%, you'll literally be making travel plans from Brisbane to Warragul on Friday as opposed to Sunday evening, Monday morning. So
correct.
That's the harsh reality of what they face. Look, I just wanted to call out 3. This is not turning into an Australian amateur golf podcast, but they deserve as much credit as they've received in recent weeks. We had the winner, of course, in Phoenix Campbell, but just calling out a group of 3 Druids, Lincoln Morgan, Quinn Croker, and Billy Dowling, all finished at 5 under in a tie for 15th. So Lincoln Morgan, the younger brother of Jed, and Quinn Croker both play out of the Royal Queensland Golf Club, and Billy Dowling is out of the Brisbane Golf Club, also most recently won the Capera Bowl, the storied tournament up here in Brisbane, the Capera Golf Club. So those 3 amateurs finishing within the top 20 as well, in an impressive outing over the 4 days at Nudgee.
That puts a bow on the Queensland PGA, I reckon, Marshy. What else you got?
I think it does. Well, I think we should just whip around as it relates to the most recent weekend of results before we look ahead to the Gippsland Super 6. So what I'm going to do is leave till last the DP World Tour Q School, because there's a number of Australians involved in that.
I've just got it all up here.
Okay, good.
There's one tournament still in play. 3 are done, one tournament still in play.
Which I believe is in Spain, Las Peñas.
They're all in Spain.
Golf Club.
They're all in Spain.
Wonderful. But I believe at least Hayden Barron, I think Baz is involved in the one that's ongoing, and there might be 1 or 2 other Aussies, but there's been a variety of Aussies.
I'll give you an update.
In Spain of 4 different DP World Tour Q School events, and this is the final stage. This is the second stage to go through to the final stage. So Drew will give us the comprehensive Q School update as it relates to DP World Tour after I go through the other results from around the world on the weekend. On the PGA Tour, it was the Worldwide Technology Championship, the El Carnal Las Cabos in Mexico, relevant because it was a Tiger Woods designed golf course, the first in Mexico, and I believe the first time playing the PGA Tour event for a Tiger Woods designed golf course. So Eric Van Rooyen takes home his second PGA Tour victory, and he becomes the most recent South African since Eric Van Rooyen. There's a quirky little stat for you, Druids. He is the 2 most recent South Africans to win on the PGA Tour. It's been a little bit of a lean trot for our friends from South Africa, but Eric Van Rooyen had a walk-off eagle to secure that tournament ahead of Matt Kuchar and Camilo Villegas. Sidebar for a moment, it's worth taking a look. Eric Van Rooyen tends to divide a little bit of opinion in my experience as it relates to golfing fans. I've always enjoyed his work. I think he was, a really entertaining member of the 2019 President's Cup team. Was the Pres Cup team he made, wasn't it? Eric Van Rooyen.
I think so.
It was. So I've always really enjoyed his stuff, but he's bit of a polarizing figure. Quality interview after this. A fair bit going on for a close friend of his. In fact, a college teammate, John Trezana, who is just battling now a terminal melanoma diagnosis, and Eric Van Rooyen clearly working through some really challenging pieces as it relates to that horrific news for his best friend. And I thought he spoke wonderfully well. Got quite emotional on the 18th green, but I think it's worth the 2.5 minutes to listen to how he spoke, because it's a reminder that it's a game that we love, it's a game we're passionate about, but it is ultimately just a game. So Eric Van Rooyen was a 2-stroke winner in Mexico. As it relates to the Aussies, Drew's Lucas Herbert was the best finishing there, and a tie for 31st. Cam Percy, I think, led the tournament at one stage. He opened with a 62, if you don't mind.
10 under.
And then went 72. Yeah. Then he went 72, 70, 72 to finish in the tie for 59th. So ebbs and flows for Cam Percy, and Harrison Endicott missed the cut there. On the LPGA, they were in Japan for the Toto Japan Classic. Hannah Green finishing a tie for 40th is the best Aussie. Kempe, Sarah Kemp, tie for 63rd behind the winner, Mono Inami. On the Asian tour, line them up. This was the Volvo China Open in Shenzhen. Jack Thompson was the highest finishing Aussie, including a hell of an eagle putt. I think it was Friday or Saturday, he finished with an incredible eagle putt to propel himself up the leaderboard, eventually finishing a tie for 11th. Scotty Henn, tie for 25th. Douglas Klein, tie 50th. Travis Smythe, an outright 53rd after battling a bit of food poisoning from what I saw, which is always difficult, particularly there in China. Johnny Loris, tie for 54th, and Todd Sinnott in the tie for 64th. And a variety of Aussies who didn't make the cut, including a good friend of the show, Zach Murray, Tommy Powell Horan, Andrew Dote, Kevin Wan, and Marcus Fraser, amongst a list of Aussies who missed the cut. On the Asian tour. On the Japan tour, they were playing in Hyogo at the Minabe ABC Championship. Brad Kennedy was the highest finishing Aussie in outright 6th behind the winner, Keita Nakajima. Brendan Jones in tie for 40th. Quayle in the tie for 51st. And Dylan Perry in a tie for 55th. And finally, Druids, in your favourite tour, the TimberTech Championship on the PGA Tour of Champions, Podrick Harrington was the winner there, pocketing a cool $350,000 US. Rod Pampling, the best finishing Aussie, in a tie for 14th. Stuart Appleby in a tie for 25th. And Richard Green in a tie for 39th. So that kind of wraps up results around the world as it relates to the weekend, other than, as we cross back to you, in Australian Western Standard Time for the wrap-up of the second stage of qualifying for next year's DP World Tour. Take it away, Druids.
Well, I've got it here. I just want to circle one quick one back to the Japan Golf Tour. It's not really a tour that we pay a huge amount of attention to, let's be honest.
No,
but Keita Nakajima was the name there that you read out, the winner, winning 24 million Japanese dollars. Not sure what the currency is in Japan. Is it the yen?
Yen.
It's the yen.
Japanese yen.
Don't know what the conversion rate is. People remember, may have heard of the name that Keita Nakajima. He was an incredible amateur career. Was the number one amateur golfer in the world for a record 87 weeks, and he won the Panasonic Open on the Japan Golf Tour when he was an amateur back in 2021. He turned pro in 2022, made his professional PGA Tour debut at the Zozo Championship, finished T12, and he's now got 3 wins against his name. This is for a kid who is 23 years old. So he's going to be something special. He's played in 4 major tournaments, has missed the cut at all of them, but he's going to be something. He's going to be something pretty special, I think, Keita Nakajima. Anyway, not the point of why I'm talking.
If you just bear with me for a moment, because I'm sure there'll be people curious. 24 million Japanese yen equates to 246,000 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's not what I thought it was going to be.
Inflation. That's what it is.
Hyperinflation. All righty. let's have a look at the DP World Tour qualifying,
Please.
the Q School. So there is one tournament. So there's 4 tournaments that have happened across the last handful of days. For whatever reason, there is one that hasn't started as yet. That is the one that Connor McKinney is leading. So he's 6 under par. He's had a 72, a 71, and then he went out and had a 64 yesterday, which is rocketing him into the lead. He's in the final group with Oliver Lindell and Connor O'Rourke from Ireland. Also in that in that tournament, James Marcassani at +2 in a tie for 21st is teeing off shortly, as is Hayden Barron at T45. He's at +6. He needs a big day to get himself close to the to the number. Aldrich Potgieter, who, as you remember, of course, resides here in Perth. Yeah, he's 10 over par. He needs a massive day, as does Cooper Eccleston, who is currently, unfortunately, last at 22 over par. Lucas Higgins, the other Aussie in that tournament, who withdrew after back-to-back 80s to start it off. So that's still about to tee off. There are some other ones that have finished up. This is hot off the press. So we've got at the Desert Springs Resort. This has literally just finished. Unfortunately for us, there's not a lot of Aussies on the leaderboard, but there is a very good friend of the show who has just snuck in by one shot, and that's Blake Windred, who was qualified
Outstanding
through to the next round. He had a 76 today, so he has really just scraped in as Blake. So, but good news, he's in nonetheless. In terms of other Aussies in the field in that one, we didn't have any further apart from James Hydes, who is a Kiwi. He finished in 68th, unfortunately. Other one just to mention here from Trinidad and Tobago, Benjamin Martin finishing at 8 under, just one shot outside the qualifying. So shout out to the golfer from Trinidad and Tobago. Don't often see that. Moving on to.
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, in terms of Trinidad and Tobago and global sport, so there'd be a few natives of Trinidad and Tobago who fall into, say, the broader West Indian cricket setup.
Sure.
But my favourite, would you call it a Trinidadian or Trinidad and Tobagoan? Just Trinidad and Tobago athlete.
Would you like me to look it up?
Please, as I'm telling this story.
Okay.
And I don't know if you'll recall this because you're a few years shy of me, and I was, I think I was 10.
Okay.
For the 2000 Sydney Olympics. So I don't know what your memories are like for the 2000 Sydney Olympics, but I was actually fortunate enough. I was down in Sydney, obviously lived up in Brisbane, but parents got some tickets. We saw some fantastic things. We went out to Penrith and saw a couple of Aussie medals in the rowing. We were very fortunate to go and see the hockey Roos, the women's, win the gold medal match in the hockey. But we were staying with a family friend of ours who, and this is a long-winded story to get back to Trinidad and Tobago, but stay with me. We were staying with a friend of ours who he became a Foundation Stadium member of what was then Stadium Australia. So construction was completed, I think, late 98. For those that recall, it was open in 99 and actually hosted the State of Origin in 1999 and then the grand final, the Rugby League grand final in 1999. This was kind of like a test run to get people, how we're using the venue before 2000. So family friend, Foundation Stadium member, it actually opened up access to certain events for first priority preference tickets for the Olympics. So we're staying with him down in Sydney, and I'm an impressionable kind of 9-10-year-old, and he says to me, we've been to all these events, been to the rowing, been to the hockey, been down in Sydney for 5 or 6 days, and he just says to me one afternoon, I'm taking you tonight. Mum and Dad are staying home. We're off to the beach volleyball. And I was like, oh, okay, fantastic. That sounds great. I'd love to go on another Olympic event. Get on the train, head out to
what I didn't know at the time was Homebush because I hadn't been there yet. And I'm looking around, getting off the train, going, "Geez, it's a pretty big place for beach volleyball." He's like, "Yeah, no, it's it's Olympics. Get the crowd in, it's fantastic." We kind of walk into the stadium, and I'm walking along the concourse. I'm looking through each section. It looks like an athletics track. So no, they bring the sand in. They drop the sand in fresh. I've got no idea what's going on. I'm eating this story up because I'm 9 years old.
Yeah.
Get to the seat. Turns out he's taken me to the final of the men's 100 meters. It was the night of the men's 100 meters, which was won by Maurice Green,
right,
from the US. And famously, he crosses the finish line, takes his shoes off, throws him to the crowd. But one of his arch rivals, and I believe medalled, I could look it up now if I spoke quickly, but Addo Bolden was a sprinter from Trinidad and Tobago. ATO BOLDON, if you're Googling for me now, Addo Bolden. And this is back in the day, like traditionally now these days, dominated by the US sprints, but like places like the Bahamas or Trinidad and Tobago, like they had these random, like even Great Britain back in the days, like a Linford Christie, unreal sprinters. And Addo Bolden was just this understated, like you had the complete American 100-meter alpha in Maurice Green, and you had this understated, he was short, stocky bloke from Trinidad and Tobago, Addo Bolden. I'm pretty sure he would have been on the podium, would have been silver or bronze in the men's 100 at the Sydney Olympics.
Silver in the 100, bronze in the 200.
There you go. Not bad.
There you go. Good story. I love that. All right.
There you go. Little segue.
I like
that was a really, really long tangent about Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to global athletes, but Addo Bolden sticks in the memory.
Became a senator, actually. Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. There you go. I'm just reading it.
Senator Bolden.
The denominator for Trinidad and Tobago, there's Trinidadian and Tobagonian, Trini,
yes,
or colloquially Trinbagonian. So anyway, I'll continue saying person. I'm going to say
Tobago.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. The others, back to the GP World Tour qualifying, the one that finished up yesterday, I believe, Andre Lauti from obviously the Aussie, finishing at 13 under, and Matthias Sanchez at 11 under, both qualifying through to the next round. No other Australians in that field. That was won by Philip Katic of Germany. Simon, they call him.
Simon's brother.
Yeah. Oh God, I've been waiting to say that for like the last half hour, and just finished up 27 minutes ago. Some great news as well. Hayden Hopewell, who was, I believe, the overnight leader at the Fontanelles Golf Club. He is finished in a tie for fourth alongside Kiwi Sam Jones. So he'll be going through to the next round as well. Cade McBride was the other Aussie in the field there. He missed by 2 shots. And that is all to report from the DP World Tour Q School KM.
Excellent. Good result there for Matthias Sanchez as well. People will recall we had him on the show not long after he won the Q School event here in Victoria.
Yep. Playing good golf.
Ago. Yeah, absolutely. And big Melbourne man. So grand off lag. Good on you, Matthias. We love that. Druids, back to the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia.
Yeah.
To the sponsors there. Gippsland Super 6, we head down to Warragul Country Club this weekend. Tommy Powell, the defending champion, of course, he went on to claim one of the 3 DP World Tour cards by way of the Order of Merit last season. So Tommy that we're just talking about, the DP World Tour, Tommy Powell, the defending champion in his tournament, good field, filling out this week. Just wanted to call out Jasper Stubbs is in the field, the Asia Pacific Amateur Champion, in his first start since that famous victory at Royal Melbourne. That will be good to watch. The qualifiers were earlier today. Zach Maxwell won that at 4 under. James Mee from up here out of Brisbane, he got through as well. And a variety of others. It's quite a long list of qualifiers, actually. Your mate Grieso James Grierson. Got through. Cooper Geddes, impressive player as well, got through on qualifying. So, yeah, it was a busy day there. Today was the qualifying event. A strong list there. So, not sure if you've got a tip for us heading into this event. Just before we do that, I love, we've spoken about probably a variety of ways in which the tour has started to broaden its footprint in recent years. This tournament, along with the Hunter, like you can probably draw in the WAPGA and Cal, but that's got a storied history, particularly at that course, and a fair bit of tradition now. But this tournament and the one they put up in the Hunter, I think is a really good illustration of taking golf regionally. We spoke to Greg Blewett about that most recently for the inaugural WebEx Play Series event in South Australia, and that could have been played at the Grange, it could have been played at Royal Adelaide, took it to Wollonga, down in the Clare Valley. So credit to the tour for maintaining events that are taking a regional footprint, because it is important. We've spoken to an awful lot of players on this podcast whose journeys in the game began well outside metro city limits. So the importance of, we saw all those kids at Nudgee Golf Club on the weekend. We'll see just as many, if not more, at the Warragul Country Club. And that's incredibly important that events like this are taken to regional areas.
Totally agree. I still am not the biggest fan of the Super 6 format in terms of 3 days of stroke play, and then it turns into match play after a cut. I think it could potentially be somewhat improved, but alas, it is not. As you said, yes, a pretty decent field assembled again. I'm going to go with my tip now. A guy who's in good form was right in the thick of the action last week at Queensland PGA, finished T2, coming off some good form in Asia as well at the Macau Open T11. Obviously, that was won by who won that? Minwoo Lee won that, didn't he? Macau Open?
He did. He did. Yeah, he did. He went wire to wire. Yep.
He did. That's right. And finished T11 in this tournament last year. Is Nick Vogt from New Zealand. So I'm gonna go with him this week. I think he's clearly playing good golf. He was very close last week at Nudgee there. So I will have Nick Vogt this week.
Good call. We kind of said it at the top here, Mika, the only two players over par in that group of 7 that finished in a tie for second. So, I think he's clearly only 1 or 2% off where he needs to be. I think it's a great tip from you, and a player that should come in full of confidence for this event. I'm just scrolling up through the thing. I see James Marcazzani is confirmed in the field. So he's clearly looking at making the long trip home from Europe, Spain, to be specific. Just mentioned his name amongst group playing.
Who are you going?
In the second stage of qualifying. So I'm probably tossing up between 2 or 3, but I will pull the trigger and say Jake McLeod. Okay. So I think I've seen enough in his early form in the season, particularly what we saw kind of back end of the tournament on the weekend, to get himself up into I think it was a T12 finish we spoke about earlier, so definitely in the top 15. I did see today he's also on a billboard, so I think that projects well down there at Gippsland, I believe. His likeness is projected larger than life across the greater Gippsland area. So I think that projects well. But interesting, I was having a chat to a person we know and a person who I'd consider as relatively well connected about a variety of different things. Sat and had a coffee with them last week, and there was a very small portion of the conversation that turned to Jake and talking about his enormous talent, like widely regarded by his peers as one of the most naturally talented players on the tour. I think we've seen that. We've covered in chapter and verse the struggles he had probably over a 2 or 3 year period. But for me, there were definite projections last summer. I think that we saw a tangible turning of the corner, and I think he started well again this summer. So high praise from his peers. to talk about being one of the most naturally talented players on this tour. It's down to probably a couple of adjustments here or there with the swing and just continuing to carve out a bit of added professionalism, I think, around his game to continue to harness what we know he's got. And I think we will see, whether it's this weekend in Gippsland or at some stage across the summer, him lifting a trophy. I think it's inevitable based on how good he is and the way he's trending.
Yeah, I was just having a look at his OWGR. It's kind of not diamonds or dust, but it's he's either missing cuts or he's there or thereabouts. So I agree. Probably won't be too far away before it all comes together for Jake, and still one of the all-time great chats. I truly believe that on this show. It was he had us in stitches. He did. So go check that one out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It's well worth it. Drew, that'll probably do it for me for the Gippsland Super 6. Obviously, we'll take a look back at it. But encourage people to keep a close eye on that tournament over the weekend. And, of course, they stay down in Victoria as well for one of the great tournaments down there in the peninsula the following week. So good fortnight of golf down in Victoria before we round back to Royal Queensland for the PGA in a few weeks' time. Before we leave, Drew, it's a bit of news around fresh off the press earlier today out of head office, Australian Golf headquarters down there in Sandringham. Robert McIntyre, Big Shot Bob, a personal favourite of yours, one of the great driver off the deck proponents in world golf, and of course a part of that historic European Ryder Cup winning team most recently, and certainly played a role. His partnership with Justin Rose in particular was outstanding across that fixture. He will be heading down to Australia, confirmation today, for both the PGA Championship and the Australian Open. So that's good news. And it's fleshing out. I mean, we had confirmation as well late last week. So this was probably Thursday, Friday, certainly after we'd recorded, confirmation of Mark Leishman, Daniel Hillier, Nick Hardy and Patrick Rogers, both PGA Tour players. So not household names, but we are drawing. It's probably similar to 5 or 6 years ago when Harold Varner was coming down. That level of player on the PGA Tour is committing to playing a couple of tournaments here in Australia. But Big Shot Bob is an excellent addition, I think, not least of which purely because of his play, but he's got a bit of a cult following, a very well liked player amongst golfing fans, and I think he'd be a great addition to those two tournaments, across the next couple of weeks down here in our two big blue ribbon events.
Totally agree. I think people are probably listening to this saying that we're talking out both sides of our mouth when we were kind of hanging shit on Michael Block coming down for the event and taking the spot of another young and up and coming Aussie. But I think that's I think those players kind of serve either one or two purposes. I think we said this at the time. It's either to get ticket sales or to compete. And unfortunately, I don't think Michael Block is going to do either of those. But Robert McIntyre, I think, ticks both of those boxes. So I actually don't mind the addition of Robert McIntyre in that context. I think it's going to be, to your point, has that cult following, and I think that's going to be a good tick in the box. And everyone else who's committed, again, exciting time. That field's shaping up to be really good. Adrian Moronk as well, I believe, is locked. He's obviously the defending champion at the Aussie Open. So good to see that field shaping out. What other news have you got around? Because then I've got one thing at the end that I've got to bring up. So.
Well, I just want to round back to your point that there may be some accusing us of talking out both sides of our mouth. To those people, I'd just point out that on the PGA Tour this weekend, it was remiss of me actually not to, as I was running through the results, where I mentioned the winner, I mentioned how the Australians finished. I, of course, should, Drew, point out how invitees of our two biggest events of the summer finished in those events as well. And it was remiss of me not to point out that at the WWT Championship, where the winner finished at 27 under, the cut line was 4 under. Our good friend Michael Block missed the cut by 8 strokes, finishing in equal last at 4 over. So to those people who would accuse us of talking out both sides of our mouth, I present that without prejudice and without any further words necessary.
What else
And
you
I will
got?
be making it. I will be making it my mission to have Robert McIntyre on this podcast.
Okay.
So
I'll leave that
I'm
with
looking at
you.
the schedule. I'm looking at the schedule. 23 to 26 November. And he certainly won't be flying home. I wouldn't imagine between that and the Australian Open. He'll be spending a bit of time down under, I would presume. So I will make it my absolute mission to secure. I think we're in a pretty good spot with the tour now as it relates to our relationship. There's very productive conversations about availability and requests and things of that nature.
You've done that.
So we'll put that to the test. There'll be an official request going in for Big Shot Bob.
Bobby. What else you got? Any other golf news?
The floor is yours.
I was just going to say it's Melbourne Cup Eve, KM. I just wanted to know if you had a tip for the people that, because we've turned a corner with our tips. I just wanted to know if you had a tip for the Melbourne Cup. I don't know if you even got the field up in front of you, but
do you know? I was only thinking about this today. I don't know, and please, those people listening, in no way, shape, or form hear this as a thinly veiled, like saying up to the cup or any of that shit. I just don't know that I've ever been as disengaged with the Melbourne Cup as I am this year. And power to have a wonderful day tomorrow, a couple of flutes of champagne, little chicken and coleslaw roll, throw on your box trifecta, throw on your mystery quinella. I think it's great. I love the cup. So this is not, as I said, by no means I think, it should be called off. It's just for whatever reason this year it hasn't piqued my interest. So I wouldn't want to be disingenuous and scramble to find a tip, nor would I want to waste what appears to be the foundations of a good run, throwing away an unresearched tip. But I'm assuming that means that you do have one.
Well, I do, but anyway, no. Look, I don't really know. This will be the podcast's tip. You are tipping on behalf. Okay, sure. Sounds good. I've been pretty big on number 7 Absurd for a little while there, particularly if it stays dry. 2 at odds that I do like: Future History and Breakup, both of those, and 1 at enormous odds that I think is not worth the $91 that you're currently getting is Dakyarn Sweet Jr., who ran 6th last year. So they're my 4 that you can have at the moment, and look forward to coming in next week. And all of those horses have finished dead last. So we'll see. I was going to say it doesn't
sound like you've put much thought into it at all, which is good. No, that's great. I hereby endorse those as the official tips of the 19th Tee podcast.
Wonderful.
Obviously, gamble responsibly.
Yes,
think about what you could really be losing and all the other key messages that float around sports betting agencies these days.
Yeah.
It was remiss of me, actually. I do want to mention one thing before we go. And I probably should have, I've only just remembered, and maybe it's because I've tried to bury it into the deep, dark recesses of my mind. I probably should have put my hand up and owned this at the very beginning of the podcast, but I do have an official apology to issue for something I said last week. So you'll recall as we neared the end of last week's podcast and we were looking ahead to the Queensland PGA, I took great umbrage with an official tour communique that, amongst other things, as a preview of the event, listed broadcast times and statistics and course records and previous champions. But at the very bottom of that communique was a list of players to watch. And you'll remember, Druids, that I took great umbrage with the fact that the most recent champion, Aaron Wilkin, was not on the list of players to watch.
It's because he wasn't playing, was he?
It's a pretty good reason for that. It's actually because he wasn't in the field. So I need to put my hand up and issue an apology for that. As I said, I should have done this at the top of the show. It makes matters even worse that the player himself was the person who informed me of this. We're exchanging a few messages, and I thought, I'll puff my chest to Eddie and tell him I went into bat for him, and he said, "Oh, actually, I'm not playing, man." So that was pretty good. Pack schedule.
Good
pack
shit.
Schedule is. Yeah, he's playing a lot in Asia. He's, gearing himself for the big tournaments, so I could make it due to a pack schedule, but always got your back, whether you're in the field or not. We'll go.
Anyone else that you want to go into bat for this week that's not playing in the Gippsland Super 6? I don't know, Cameron Smith, Adam Scott, any of those? You want to go in and fight for those?
I think it would be fair to say I'm a little gun shy as it relates to calling that out, and until further notice, I back whomever the tour decide to nominate as their players to watch for their tournaments each and every week.
Sounds good.
It's my bad.
All right,
that's my bad.
All righty. What else you got? Anything else, or is that the wrap up?
I think that'll do us. There's plenty of other things coming down the pipeline, but we'll get to. We've got the Sandbelt Invitational coming up as well, which we might do our level best to get Clates back on to have a chat about the tournament that he co-hosts with Jeff Ogilvie. Cathedral Lodge is back for another year with a very impressive lineup. That's later on in December. So obviously we've got the official tour sanctioned events. We've got these exhibitions that happen in and around the back end of the year, which will all make for some very exciting months across kind of November, December, January, February. So plenty coming down the pipeline. Make sure you're tuned into the socials. We're tossing around some ideas as it relates to the major tournaments as well. So Drews and I will talk about that off the airs.
Yes.
And I'm back to you with some confirmed news. But yeah, lots happening. So make sure whether it's subscribing to us on Spotify, on Apple, whether it's following us on the socials, drop us a line, 19thpodcast@gmail.com if you've got some feedback.
Sure. Why not?
We're always up to it. But yeah, dial in because it's a big few weeks ahead. You have your hand raised.
Sorry. Yes, I do.
Please go.
Well, you did most of the work for me. I was just going to say there's two things that I forgot. Picking up on your point here, later in the week we've got a Blitz Golf season preview coming up with Simon Zybeck, which I just recorded before we hit the record button. So keep an ear out for that. That'll be a nice, short, snappy 20-minute preview. 5 events they've got coming up this season. And I was also going to say this is how on the same wavelength we are. Yes, if you could leave us a review, a 5-star review would be ideal. That all helps, whether that's on Spotify or the Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to your podcast through. That would be greatly appreciated. And as Marshy said, follow us on the socials as well. That's it. That's all. They're the 2 things that I wanted to say. That's it. No more words.
Your plug of Simon's chat has also just reminded me, for those who may have missed it, obviously there's plenty of things going on as it relates to week in, week out tournament play, but there are plenty of other issues about in the game. It's wonderful, and we've been big supporters from day dot and will continue to be of the Blitz Golf format, so make sure you tune in for that chat with Simon to see what's coming, whether it's as a spectator or even as a participant. You're able to jump into those events in your local area. So Simon will go through that in great detail with Drews later in the week. But a rewind to a chat we released on Friday. Really, it was Thursday evening, but you might not have got it in your feeds until Friday. A conversation that I had with Sandy Jamison from Oakley Golf Club in Melbourne. Little 9-holer in the Monash City Council, under threat, I think it would be fair to say, as is seemingly public golf at large across the country, with the news at a Moore Park in Sydney as well. Whom we'll look to connect with and tell their story in the very near future. But I thoroughly enjoyed the chat with Sandy, an incredible advocate, not only for his golf club, the game of golf, and public access golf in Australia. And you don't have to access the Oakley Golf currently. You don't have to live in the Monash City Council area to have your say. You can make a submission. And as I said in the chat, and I'll say it again, if you in any way, shape or form care about public golf in this country, I'd urge you to put a submission in, because it would be naive to think the battle that Oakley Golf Club is facing will not be something that your public course faces in the future.
Well said. Well said, Marshy.
Wonderful. Drews, that's been our very first episode presented by our wonderful friends at Cobra at Puma Golf. I appreciate your company, as I appreciated your confidence in me at the beginning. I'm sure there'll be plenty of listeners. There might have been a little book running, whether or not I'd remember to do that. And I'm sure 40, Jack, Simon, and the greater team there at CPGA, Cobra Puma Golf Australia, we're thrilled that we've got that across the line. A couple of mentions there. We've got the ad. We've got Mika in the Alpha Cat Nitros, the most comfortable golf shoe on the market. Keeping our eyes peeled for that as well as he struts around Gippsland. But hey, it's a great partnership they're a part of, and we're very proud to have them on board as our presenting partner, as I'm proud to join you each and every week on this podcast, Drews. It's been a pleasure as always. Enjoy Warragul. We'll be back in your ears on Monday evening.